Howdy folks, I'm MeetTheName, and today I bring you a review of the 2024 horror thriller, Longlegs. Longlegs was written and directed by Osgood Perkins, who is known for such films as The Blackcoat's Daughter, I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, and Gretel and Hansel. In the United States, the film was distributed by Neon, while Black Bear International handled the international release. That's sorta in the name, I guess. The film stars an interesting cast, with Maika Monroe playing the protagonist Lee Harker, a stoic FBI agent who is tasked with finding the infamous serial killer Longlegs, who is played by the Nicolas Cage. We also see other folks in the film such as Blair Underwood, Alicia Witt, and Michelle Choi Lee. The film is 101 minutes long and was made with a budget of only $10 million. So far it has accrued $35.6 million, which is still impressive for such a small budgeted film. With all that said, what exactly is this spooky little movie all about? The general premise is that an FBI agent by the name of Lee Harker is assigned with finding the serial killer Longlegs, as previously mentioned. In order to do so, she must use not only her intuition, but also what appears to be some sort of mysterious psychic power that helps to point her in the right direction. The deeper Lee looks into the history of Longlegs and his victims, the more things begin to unravel. And in that unraveling, Lee will discover secrets that she may not have wished to see. Overall, I thought that the story was definitely intriguing. If you've seen films like Seven or Silence of the Lambs, you'll appreciate the detective angle that the film has. But know that in the latter half of the film, this angle becomes less of the point as other elements begin to make themselves known. So it's also a bit of a mix of Hereditary and some Nosferatu as well, in terms of a strong tie to emotion and the dreariness of the world that the film is set in. And I could go deeper into the comparisons, but then that would be spoiling the film, which I often try to avoid. Let's just say that there's a little bit of The Conjuring in there, except, actually good. I'll also say that there are some times where the story seems to lag a bit, and the film will often linger on shots for just a bit too long, where the uneasiness of the scene seems to wear off and you are left with more bewilderment than anything else. I'll also say that some of the dialogue in the film can be a bit clunky at times, as in it doesn't seem to flow naturally. Although that could be intentional given the overall tone that the film is going for. Now, let's move on to the characters. As mentioned before, Maika Monroe plays Lee Harker, and I'll say that she did a decent job. She's rather reserved, if not a bit stoic in the role, and that'll definitely unsettle you a bit. She feels like a stranger, even when surrounded by people that she knows. She definitely isn't an audience insert, and she has her own secrets to divulge as the film goes on, which makes her far more interesting than most horror protagonists I've seen. But what good is a protagonist if we don't have a good antagonist to go along with them? Nicolas Cage plays the eponymous Longlegs in this film, and while he isn't in it a lot, what scenes he is in will fill you with confusion at first, and then an unsettling fear after. At times, he can chew up the scene a bit too much, which will distract you from everything that's going on. But overall, it's your standard Nick Cage madness that you've grown to love or hate depending on who you are. If you aren't a fan of Nick Cage, then you probably won't like him in this film. But if you love the guy like I do, you're in for a good time. Up next, the set design. The film itself takes place in the 1990s, and the sets go out of their way to tell you that it is indeed that time period. One of the biggest clues is that in one of the scenes, there's just a giant freaking picture of Bill Clinton that's smack dab in the background. And of course, there's the old school cell phones too, in case you needed more evidence that it's the 90s. As for the sets themselves, I'd say that coupled with the color grading, they are designed to be very drab, almost clinical in a way. It's a very gray looking film, and at most, the brightest colors that you'll see will either come from ceiling lights or splashes of blood. These are not friendly looking sets, which I think helps with the overall horror atmosphere that the film has. Speaking of blood, the effects in this film are sparse. Don't expect a ton of blood spraying everywhere, at least not until later in the film. I think the most impressive effects in the film were the makeup that they used on Nick Cage. The dude looks almost unrecognizable when you see him as Longlegs. Now I won't say anything more because describing how Longlegs looks takes away from some of the fun of the film. But just know he probably doesn't look like anything you would expect. Finally, let's talk the score. For this movie, the original music was composed by Zilgi, aka Elvis Perkins, and it was alright. There's a lot of theremin use, and along with that, your usual string instruments. I would say that the soundtrack did not stand out that much to me. It felt like your usual horror music. So, overall, would I recommend Longlegs? And that is a tough one. The film is often surreal and dreamlike at times, and would say that it's definitely not for everyone. If you're interested in a more art house style horror experience, Longlegs is your best bet. It's reminiscent of A24 horror films, but it has its own sort of mystery vibe going on. The acting is decent, if a bit awkward in how some of the lines are said. Pacing can be a bit slow, but things do start to ramp up towards the end. It's gray and it feels uninviting, which I think is good for a horror film like this. Most importantly, it has Nicolas Cage in it. If you enjoy him and the work he does, you'll probably enjoy this film too. But if you don't, then I would probably say that you shouldn't watch this film. So yeah, that's my review on Longlegs. Give it a watch if you are interested in something a bit different from the usual Blumhouse offerings. Howdy folks, thank you all so much for watching this video. It's been a while since I last did something scripted, and it felt good. If you like this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Every bit of interaction really does help me out. With all that said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.